kick us off.
Great, thanks, Jen. Melanie, would you introduce yourself, please? Tell us a little bit about yourself and your role.
Sure. So, hello, everybody. I'm Melanie McGovern. I'm the Director of Public Relations for the International Association of Better Business Bureaus. We are the parent organization to the 90 Better Business Bureaus across North America. Wherever you live, you have a Better Business Bureau that is local to you, that provides services to businesses and consumers. I've been with BBB 11 years. I've been with the association here for 3 years. If I look familiar, you may have seen me as I am the spokesperson for the organization, doing TV interviews and just being like the most visible person, I guess. But yeah, I'm an expert in consumer education and scam tips. So just really thrilled to be here to be able to share BBB information with everybody today.
That's great. We're really happy to have you on. Roger, would you introduce yourself, please?
Thank you, Lisa. My name is Roger Renteria. I'm lead for the Education and Awareness Program here at Discover, which is a division of Capital One North America. And what I've been doing so far is sharing a lot of education and awareness, cyber awareness, a lot of things that are staying safe online wherever you are, whether that's at work, at home, or on the go. And I've been doing this role for almost 3 years, but have a vast knowledge in social media marketing and digital know-how, and basically just sharing really great information that you can learn practically anywhere.
Great. Thank you so much for being here. And I love that everybody in the chat is dropping in where they're from, including Beaver Island out there in Lake Michigan. Fantastic. I'm glad we have people from all over the globe, it looks like. Roger, I'm going to start with a question for you. So during the holiday season, we see an increase in online shopping. Obviously, we all have our lists that we're trying to plow through all our gifts for everybody. But that obviously also brings an increased risk of scams. So, what are some of the things that some of the online shopping scams that you're seeing right now this holiday season?
Yeah, great question, Lisa. So what we're seeing, and this is overall for everything, is are scams that happen online, whether that's a lookalike site. What that means is the lookalike site, it appears to be impersonating a legitimate site. And in those cases, there are some telltale signs that you can find on that lookalike site, such as a logo that looks fuzzy, things don't look right, deals that look good, too good to be true. And in those cases, doing your research and searching, and maybe even just trusting your gut when it comes to those sites, looking at the URL, if it's a little different, or if the payment methods are asking, for different types of things, such as like a wire transfer or a gift card to pay for those things, back out and try again, and maybe search for something different or an alternative product for the shopping season.
I think because the bad guys now have AI too, just like the rest of us. I think the lookalikes are getting really, really, really good. I mean, I tell people we're asked all the time about what AI is doing to fraud and scams. It's increasing the quality and the quantity. So I think Roger, you mentioned kind of trusting your spidey senses, your gut feel. People have to do a little more due diligence too to look at the URL and abide by some of those other tips because we're not always going to see the awkward English or the fuzzy logo as much as we have in the past because the bad guys have gotten so good at it. Melanie, do you have anything to add to that one?
I think the biggest thing we need to remember as consumers is the one thing we see most on our scam tracker on our website, where people are reporting, I was scrolling, insert social media platform here, and clicked on an ad and made a purchase, and then I never got the item or the item was wrong. So I think the biggest thing we need to remember this holiday season is the passive shopping, passive scrolling. You're kind of just passing the time, looking at Instagram, looking at Facebook, whatever it is. And then you see an ad and you click on it and you make that purchase. And then all of a sudden, a couple of weeks later, you're like, wait, I never got that item. So just understanding the retailer that you're working with, like Roger said, the lookalike websites, you have to be really careful. Some will just put themselves up, we have all these 5-star reviews. Just taking that like spidey sense, that little bit of skepticism and say, I'm going to look this business up, on the BBB site. I'm going to run it through a search engine, see what people are saying about it. And then, if you're comfortable, then go ahead and make the purchase. But if you're not comfortable, you might want to find that item somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, I even think somebody, a reporter asked me this morning about online reviews. Remember when those were a brand new thing? And we looked at reviews and thought those are super helpful. Now there's, my husband runs them through FakeSpot or one of these websites that checks for fake reviews because they're getting less and less helpful because there's just a lot of stuff in there that maybe isn't as trustworthy as when that whole functionality was a brand new thing and really, really helpful. You mentioned kind of our tendency to just scroll, and now we're shopping while we're scrolling. Several social media apps have launched their own online shopping platforms, like from within the app. We're getting a lot of questions about these, and if anybody has any questions while we're on the webinar today, please feel free to just drop those in the chat or in the Q&A. I'm not sure if we're using both or just one today, but what are the risks associated with the social media the shopping within the social media app?
In some cases, the app is just the conduit for the retailer. So if you do have an issue and you can't figure out who the retailer was, maybe if you file a complaint against the app might not take that. So knowing like who the retailer is, how to get in touch with them, what is their return policy, what is their shipping policy, is there a reshipping fee? Going through all of that before you buy, and it's so easy because it's right there. I mean, you're on one of these apps. They're like, click the shopping cart, and you can just buy this item right away, and it's so convenient. But just knowing who that retailer is, what their policies are, it's so important, especially with the holiday season. We're getting a ton of text messages about packages that could be real. We're getting a ton of emails. Just keeping track of everything is really difficult. This does make it easier, but we want to make sure that we're using reputable retailers when we do make that purchase.
Somebody asked about checking online reviews. So my husband used to use FakeSpot. FakeSpot went away earlier this year, I think. Melanie, are you aware of any others that are out there that will help you decide if the reviews are legitimate or not?
Well, it's interesting because if you see a review on bbb.org, our team makes sure that that review is real before it's published. We get a lot of people saying, "I wrote a review this morning and it's not published yet." Well, we actually take it to the business and say, "Is this your customer?" Because we want all of those reviews to be authentic. So that's part of our policy at the Better Business Bureau that our reviews are verified before they're published.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the biggest telltale sign, and we've talked about this before, is if the reviews are a little too glowing, if they're really
Yep.
short. I think the longer the review, the more detailed it is. I think it's a little bit more trustworthy that it's actually somebody who had an experience with that product. But the biggest thing when you are reading reviews is, did the business respond and how did they respond? A negative review isn't necessarily a negative ding against a company. It's a great chance for a company to show their customer service. They're trying to make it right. They're willing to work with the customer. So I think a lot of it is take it with a grain of salt, but there are definitely telltale signs of like there's too many 5-star reviews. They're all great product. Okay, that doesn't really help.
It's not
So,
helpful.
yeah, just
Right.
making sure you're reading all the review sites too is really important.
Um, Roger, anything you want to add on that topic before we move on?
I think Melanie touched on some really good points. Also, I want to go back to one about like a lot of tracking for email and messaging. Uh, Also, some of those things can be where you might get an email or a text message from a illegitimate or spam text or message that says that you've received a package or that you ordered something, and then you kind of go back and track that down and think, oh, did I just order this thing, or did I accidentally click that order button too quickly on those sites? So taking some time and also slowing down when you see something that is so abrupt, because that can mean a sign of urgency to like fix a problem if there's like a delivery issue or a payment issue in those messages to do your research. And sometimes even something that I've done in the past is I'll grab that text message and I'll copy it from my text message and then put it into my search engine and see if somebody else has posted something like that on the web and see if that's a fake or an actual message. Sometimes the URL can be confusing. It can sound like it's coming from a actual, delivery service because they use those short little URLs with a code attached to that link in that URL, and sometimes that code will or may misdirect you to a site that could infect your computer or your smartphone and cause you, major issues.
Somebody's asked in the chat, is it possible that apps on the App Store or Google Play are fake or malicious? I have heard of cases of that happening. Of course, when those organizations figure that out, they do work to take those off the App Store. But Melanie, do you want to talk a little bit about that? And then we can also talk about fake apps and fake websites.
Yeah, if they're asking you to go not into the app store, I think that's the biggest red flag that an app isn't real. The app stores do a good job of getting rid of the fake apps or the malicious apps. But just, I feel like we're broken records. Like looking it up, making sure that it's the right app. There could be some lookalike apps. There's so many apps that look like they have the same color. They're small. So you want to make sure that it's the right app. And if you're not sure about it, do not connect any payment information to it or any personal information. Like if you download it, it looks legit and then it gets into your phone and you're like, wait, this might not be the right thing. Make sure you delete it right away. Don't give it any information.
So somebody says, I don't know much about malicious or fake apps or websites. How do you know if they're trustworthy? How do you know if you've landed on something that's malicious and is going to, like Roger said, give you a malware infection while you're there?
Well, you can always look, sorry, forgot to turn off my Teams. You can always look up the name of the company at the BBB website. You can run it through a search engine. You can see, how, what people are saying about it, if they have a lot of complaints, if they're answering the complaints, just asking the questions. Live chat in the App Store, things like that. You can always ask a lot of questions to see, is this real or not, before you download it. Really, really easy to do.
And I do want to
Um,
add another thing too that is in the app stores, you can look at who the author is of that application and if they created other apps, how recent that app has been updated, and also when those updates happened and the versions.
that's really good advice too.
And when
Um,
you are searching in the App Store, it's been a while since I put an app on my phone, but I do remember there are sponsored apps.
mhm.
Look for the one that you actually need. Like if you're doing like a calorie counting app and you know the name of it, there's going to be like 6 or 7 pop up. If there's one that you specifically want that you've done the research and you want to download it, go past all of those sponsored posts to get to the organic search.
Yeah, and just to continue on this theme of this question about being able to tell if a website is legitimate or not. I mean, look at the URL. It's what you'll sometimes see is cyber criminals will put like an R and an N together that looks like an M. So you'll see little tricks like that with different characters where at a glance you might not notice that it's actually misspelling of a legitimate website. That's one thing to pay attention to. Any other tips there about those lookalike websites or fake websites? I mean, because the bad guys are using AI to create these things now, it doesn't, I mean, we used to give a lot of advice, like Melanie mentioned, like, oh, just Google it. The problem is now that with the AI tools, anybody can put up a malicious website in just minutes these days, I think. And they're going to have really good graphics and the grammar is going to be correct and there's not going to be awkward English or misspellings. Why would okay, so let's back up a little bit. Why would a cyber criminal put up a fake website to begin with, and then what would they want to use that for, and then how can people recognize those?
That's a good
Roger,
question.
you want to take that one?
So, yeah, thank you. That's a good question. So, what cyber criminals are most attracted to is money, and their ways
And
that
things they can turn into money, like
and
your
they can
data.
make more
Yeah.
money they can make more money when they get more money. And in some ways, doing that as a business, they will be much more better at doing that malicious and just criminal, intent versus doing a legitimate business, which does take effort, time, and hard work.
You
Yeah,
know,
it's
it's
actually easier to
interesting.
be a criminal these days, isn't it? Then, I mean, so here's what can happen if you land on one of those sites. You can end up with a malware infection. They might install keylogger software onto your device, and they'll use that to get your password, for example, because they'll be able to take screenshots of your screen and they'll be able to see what you're typing. Um, you can end up with a remote access Trojan, which is just another malware infection that allows somebody to access your device without you really realizing it. Um, there's just a lot of undesirable things that you don't want to have to deal with. Really important that you've got good antivirus protection and you keep that up to date on your devices. Melanie, any other advice about malicious websites or apps or anything else?
It's interesting. We just today released an update to our puppy scam study. And it's exactly like you guys were saying. They create this website with these adorable puppies for less than they're retailing at other places. All they need are a couple of people to give up personal information and credit cards, and then the website's gone. And that's the thing, you know, when we people are like, oh, do you have an example of this website? I'm like, no, it was gone in 48 hours. And that's what they're hoping. They're using a product that people want that's tugging at their heartstrings. It's an expensive product, so you're going to put a credit card in and they're taking that money. You're not getting what you ordered, and then the website's gone, and then you can't do anything about it. So just knowing who you're dealing with on the other side. And a lot of those, like I literally, this is at the top of my mind, when we were looking at the puppy websites, they all look the same. It's like they're using a template. So just knowing what where to find the reputable retailer. The biggest thing, look for the contact information and do a search of the address. Is it actually a storefront, or is it a house, or is it a vacant lot? Is it just a contact form, or do they have a phone number? Where does the phone number go? Is it in the same location as they claim to be? We had a poor guy years ago in Pittsburgh who was a puppy farm and he was just a regular guy at a house. So doing those checks, especially when it comes to something that is a lot of money, you want to make sure that it's actually a business before you do business with them.
Yeah, lots of comments in here. You mentioned using credit cards. Like that's your get out of jail free card, right? Like we're big fans of using credit cards. There's some conversation in the chat about using PayPal and other methods to pay. But really, Roger, do you want to address the protections you get from credit card companies like Discover when it comes to scams and fraud?
Yeah, so when it comes to credit cards, always check with what credit card protections that come with your credit card. That's very important because, for example, there's better protections over a credit card than a debit card or using a check. And in some cases, you have protection, buyer protection with those transactions. And that's important there. And I do know that there are other payment methods out there that are possible. It just depends on how comfortable you are using those systems, but also avoiding, payments, like I mentioned earlier, of like wire transfers or gift cards, and, those types of things. There is a limited way to, get your money, and sometimes you may not be able to get your money back.
Right. Most times I would say you can't get your money back. I mean, us and the BBB hear that a lot from consumers that can't get their money back. We're huge fans of using a credit card because of the fraud protections that come with a credit card. So if you use a debit card, chances are and you figure out it was a scam, your financial services institution is very likely not going to make you whole. You don't have the same kind of protection that you do when you use a credit card. Same thing with the payment apps. It's really, really important to use a credit card. That's our best advice. Melanie, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, with the payment apps, I know we've discussed this at the BBB. If you're paying a business, like if the business has a business account, there's a little bit more recourse. But if you're paying somebody who has a personal account, you're probably not going to get your money back. So when you're going to all the festivals that are coming up in the next couple of months, and you're paying somebody like with Venmo, they all have like the little QR code you can scan. Ask them, is this a business account? Is there fraud protection? Like, how do I know my money's safe? My information's safe? Ask those questions. And yes, you are right, Lisa. We are big fans of using a credit card first when it comes to online purchases because of all the protections. And, I always tell people like, well, use my debit card. I said, yeah, but that's connected to your bank account.
Mhm.
thinking about that kind of stuff, is really important.
We had a criminal gang come through the city where I live, stealing people's phones, young people's phones in bars at night. They were logged into their payment apps, and didn't have locks on their phone, and the payment apps weren't timing them out. Like when you go to your bank website, if you aren't active, it's going to time you out, right? You're going to have to log in again. And so basically, anybody who had their phone had direct access to their bank account because their payment app was hooked up to their bank account. And if they're not logged out of the payment app, then they actually found their bank accounts drained, because their cell phones were stolen. So make sure you lock your phone. Make sure you log out of any financial services related site when you're not using it. So I'm talking about things like somebody says here, Venmo, Cash App, all those kinds of things. I think a lot of them now will time you out, will log you out after some time of inactivity, but not all of them. And so you really want to be careful. As we like to say, bad guys don't break in, they log in. So if you're logged in and somebody's got your device, they're logged in too. So somebody made a comment in here. I'm going to shift a little bit because somebody made a comment about passwords, saying that they change them frequently, and the government advice and our advice has changed about that over the past couple of years. The problem with changing them frequently is a lot of people might only change them by a character or two. Like instead of password 1, it's password 2 or password 3. It led to a lot of bad habits where we weren't creating a completely new password every time we changed it. So the government's advice and our advice now is to no longer change your password regularly, to only change it if you know that it's been involved in a data breach. If you're using a password manager, a lot of which we highly recommend, you can look at Tom's Guide or PC Mag or Consumer Reports to help you pick one. I don't know if the BBB has any content on reviewing password managers, but it will often tell you if you're using a password that's already for sale on the dark web. That can really help you to have a long, complex password for every single site. And by long, we mean 15 or 16 characters. That's the current advice. And that you're not reusing those on multiple sites. So you really don't need to change them regularly. Just make sure they're unique for every single account you have. And like I said, you probably need a password manager to help you do that. And then make sure you're using MFA on every single account that offers it, not just your financial services account, but every account that offers that. I'm also a big fan of biometrics. There's a little bit of chatter in here about biometrics. MFA is multi-factor authentication, by the way. That's the thing you need to do when you're logging onto your bank account, for example, where you know your password, and then maybe you also have a code that's been texted to you, or you've acknowledged a push notification from an authenticator app or something like that. Let's see. Can your password manager get hacked? There has been cases of password managers being breached, but it's been a while. There haven't been any other cases lately. They'd have to not just hack the password manager, but also get their hands on the encryption keys, because all that data is encrypted. So we still think that those are the best option compared to all your other options. And they help break you of all the other bad habits. Biometrics I'm a big fan of biometrics, and Roger and Melanie, I'd like to hear from you about this too. So, Apple and TSA and all these places that are using our face for us to authenticate, they're not storing that information. We tend to feel really like personal about it. It's our face or it's our fingerprint. But the reality is, for me, that using biometrics for me to log into things like my password manager and my bank account, it allows me to have better security habits, to be more secure, and also authenticate in a way that's super convenient. So I can log in to my bank account faster with biometrics and a password manager than if I had to type in my credentials myself, my username and password myself. So I like biometrics because they just make security easier and faster for me and more convenient. Melanie, what do you think? Do you personally use biometrics when they're available?
Yeah, it's interesting because I manage our social media accounts, and I got a push alert that someone was trying to change my Instagram password, but I had two-factor auth on that, and now I have my face for my Meta accounts. So yeah, having that it's so important to protecting, like all of my credit card apps open with my face, my Venmo opens with my face. I even tried once to use a picture of myself to open it and wouldn't. So that was good to know.
Yep.
But yeah, at any time, if you can put two-factor authentication on an account, absolutely do it. Just to make sure that you're protecting yourself. Yeah, it's a pain. It is a pain to like have to go into your phone, get that code. But when it comes to like, I have it for like my investment accounts, my bank, credit cards, yeah, all of those things. Having that is just, it's so critical to make sure you're keeping yourself safe.
So somebody asked, if we get notified that somebody's trying to access our account, but we have MFA, do we still need to go change the password to that account? Roger, what do you think?
That's a good question. So I would urge caution because sometimes that notification could be fake. The best way that you can find out is if it's an app like with Facebook or Google, there are ways that you can see when and where it's been logged in. There are settings in your account that you can find out the past history of where that location was logged into, where your phone has been, where your devices have been, and also the times and dates. And that way, then you could see what's happening. And in some cases, you can also, there's a setting in there that you can reset or log out everyone or every other device that has been logged in using your account. So if you have things like your smartphone, your tablet, and your PC, and you see something there, you can log out of everything but the one that you had pressed that button on.
That's such a good point that it could be phishing. That happens so much. That people might, and especially like if it comes to like your social media accounts or any banking information, if you see that, your first reaction is to click on that link in the email and figure out what's going on. So that was an excellent point to make sure it's actually real before you click on it.
And if you do think that it has been breached, then do check a few places. I know the password managers, they can check and detect if password has been breached. Another way that you can find out if your information has been in a data breach is looking at a website called Have I Been Pwned? And I believe with that website, you can put in your email address and see if it's been in a recent data breach.
Yeah, so somebody put that in the chat. Thanks for that. The one
Mhm.
thing that I'll caution is there's this concept known as mean time to detection in the
Yep.
security language. What that means is that a data breach can happen and a company might not know for weeks, months, years. So I wouldn't take too big a sense of security from seeing that maybe your email address isn't on Have I Been Pwned or isn't associated with more data breaches because it happens every day that companies have breaches and don't know it yet. And so that means that's a really good reason to not use the same password on every site because your password might have been involved in a data breach and you might not get notified. You might not get that breach notification letter in the mail for 6 months or a year. And so that means that that password that's been breached, bad guys know we like to reuse passwords. And so they're going to use technology to just spray that across the internet and see what other accounts that gets them into. They don't even have to know where you have accounts. They're just going to give it a shot. So so really, really important not to reuse passwords. And it is interesting to look at Have I Been Pwned, but I wouldn't take that to the bank to mean that you're safe to use the same password on multiple accounts, for example. Melanie, can you tell us a little bit more about the resources that the BBB has to help victims of scams?
Sure. So we have our scam tracker on our website where people can go and report a scam and they can look up a scam. So if you're in the middle of something or you're not sure, there's a search engine on our scam tracker at bbb.org that you can type in some of the narrative and it'll pop up or it won't pop up. And what we do on our end on our team is if we see a scam that's trending, we will write an alert and have it on our website, put it on our socials to let people know what's going on. There's also our scam resources. Hold on, what is it called? Our scam prevention guide, and I'll drop that in the chat. Just shows people, how to spot a scam, what to do if, their information was compromised, if they think they were part of a scam. So you can go over to bbb.org/scam prevention. There's some quizzes on there. It's a really great resource for everybody, not just, a lot of people think that scams only happen to older people, but what we find is 18 to 24-year-olds are losing more money But the older folks are targeted more. So it's something that we have the holidays coming up, have those conversations at dinner about scams and scam activity with everybody.
Yeah, so Paula's talking about her password notebook in the chat. I just want to caution, if you're keeping a password notebook, treat it like cash.
Yeah.
Keep it locked up and don't ever take it anywhere. The one thing I don't like about password notebooks is that it doesn't necessarily break us of some of these bad habits. Your password notebook isn't going to help you generate a random password. It's not going to tell you if you're using the same password on too many accounts or that you're using a password that's too short. For some people, those work, but you really have to treat it like cash and keep it locked up. Somebody else posted about info stealers and MFA. And your session tokens being stolen. I want to make sure that everybody understands that some MFA is better than no MFA at all. Yes, there are types of MFA that are more hackable than others. There are some that are more secure than others. And unfortunately, for some reason, one of the least secure ones, which is the code that we get texted to us, is probably the most common form that's offered to us. But even though it's less secure than other methods, you should still use it, because not having any at all is far, far worse. So I don't want anybody to get confused about, sometimes you'll hear security professionals debate these things. Well, that's not really as secure as this thing over here. And then what the general public hears is, well, then I'm not going to do any of it all because the security people can't even agree. And I don't want anybody to walk away with a feeling that they should just skip MFA altogether because it doesn't work. It's absolutely better than not having anything at all. Roger, anything you want to add to that, or any resources that Discover has available that you want to tell us about?
I was going to add about MFA, considering that sometimes you may get MFA fatigue, and you get that text message or that email, and then you get frustrated, and the only way to stop it sometimes is to click that link or reply back, and that you do not want to do, because then that allows the scammer to gain access to your accounts. What I consider, even what you're saying, Lisa, about any MFA is better than no MFA. At least knowing that something is happening to your account is at least a good thing to know about. So that way you can either stop the thing that's happening to your accounts, prevent it, and change it. You can at least do something and have agency in fixing or correcting what's going on with your account.
Yeah, so Roger makes a good point. If you're not the one trying to log into your account and you're getting a code texted to you, then what that tells you is that somebody else is trying to log into your account. And so don't respond to those, don't click the link, don't acknowledge those. That's really, really important. They could also be trying to reset a password, for example. So that just tells you that the MFA is actually working. Paula asked about MFA apps. So I referred to authenticator apps. These have to be offered by the account that you're creating a username and password for. Usually it takes the form of either the authenticator app, like Duo, or Google has one, Microsoft has authenticator. Usually they're going to create the code for you. In some cases, it's just a push notification. So you'll see a pop-up on your phone that'll say, is this you? Yes or no? And all you have to do is say, yeah, that's me trying to log in. Those tend to be more secure, those authenticators, than a code that's been texted to you, for example. More chatter here about password managers. Again, I'm a huge fan of these. If you've got aging loved ones that you're helping, and you've got kids away at college, and you have legitimate reasons to be sharing access to an account with a family member, for example, password manager is the easiest way to do that, rather than texting a password to somebody and then texting the MFA code. Texting is not a secure method of transmission. So for me to keep an eye on my parents' affairs, or to for us to share access to an account, like my kids' tuition accounts when they were away at college, things like that. There are just times, even think about booking a vacation for your family, and I decide, we're going to use my husband's frequent flyer miles for me to book tickets for the whole family. That's a legitimate reason. I have his approval for me to log into his account, but a password manager is an easier way to do that, and a better way to do that, rather than him texting me his password and then texting me his MFA code. So we really like password managers for those reasons, over a password notebook.
And
Let's
speaking
see.
of passwords, password managers, I recently did a talk on digital cyber legacy, and having a password manager is a really great tool
Mhm.
to keep everything organized, accounts that you have your memories in, such as, a Dropbox account or a Google Photos account that you save and upload your memories into. And what you're talking about, Lisa, about like, aging parents, keeping a check on them. It's actually a good way of preserving, the content that they've created. Because I read somewhere that there was about 190 accounts that the average internet user creates and has access to, and about 850 gigabytes of data created each year. And that came from the University of Colorado, Boulder. They have like a digital legacy clinic, and that's where a
That's
lot
really
of
cool.
great things happen there. It's going back to yeah, what you were saying.
Yeah, Lucas, can you put, I think we have a link on our website to an article about password managers. If Jen or Lucas can drop that in the chat. Um, I actually like having a cloud-based password manager. So I install it on my browser. It's on my phone. It's everywhere because that's the easiest way to use it. And then having it installed, like I can use it on an airplane. I can use it, it doesn't matter like if I'm traveling where I am, if I'm between devices. Yeah, let's see. Just ignore MFA prompts that you didn't initiate. Yep, we talked about that. Um, Thank you, Lucas, for posting that article about password managers. That's really handy. If you want to learn more about those, I would encourage you to read the online reviews. Sometimes you can get a free account just to try them out before you decide to purchase one that you can install on multiple devices or use as a family account. Uh, Okay, Melanie, any other resources that you want to talk about? I really like the links that you guys dropped in here for the scam survival kit. We've got scam prevention and scam tracker. So tell me about the scam survival kit.
So that's something that's on our website. Our BB Institute put that together. And it's just something that, if somebody has experienced a scam, it gives you steps you can take to recover. And it's just a really great tool. I want everybody to go over and look at it, honestly. And just, you know, the biggest thing I think that we have to remember is that as much as we think we're armed with information, it can happen to anybody.
Yeah.
So it's just really important to take a minute, take that website and bookmark it, look at it, and just, see how the things that happen to somebody when they are unfortunately targeted by a scammer, it's scary. And we speak with scam survivors all the time. I know Joan's here from our team. She does a wonderful job, speaking with people, getting them to tell their stories. And it's one of those things where, like I said, you don't think it's going to happen to you. Then you see somebody who looks like you, has the same education level as you, as your age group, who fell for a scam. And, it's just really interesting. So definitely take some time to go look at those resources on our website.
Somebody mentioned job scams. We actually have a recorded webinar. We did a webinar this summer about job scams, so you can find that at our website. Lucas, if you want to drop a link to that one, I think it's on YouTube. Sonia's asking, do you guys have any advice or thoughts on buying from reseller shops on Walmart or Amazon or AliExpress? Melanie, what do you think?
Oh, the reseller sites, again, just making sure that if, what is the platform's responsibility if something goes wrong? Is it the seller or the buyer or the seller? Or are you dealing directly, sorry, English. Are you dealing directly with the seller or are you dealing with the platform? I think that is where people get super confused. So just making sure you understand terms and conditions before you make that purchase is really important. Because if something does go wrong and you try to file a complaint against Walmart or, the other platform, and they're like, nope, sorry, it's the responsibility of the seller, and then you can't find that seller, that they may have disappeared or deleted their account. Just knowing, where you need to go if something should go wrong, before you make that purchase can save you a lot of time, headaches, and money.
Sonia's also asking which e-commerce sites or companies are being targeted the most. Is there any official report or any data on this? I mean, my answer is going to be the ones that are the most popular. I mean, you know,
I think
Amazon and Walmart.
it's all of them. I mean, everybody uses their, like, we know the most impersonated companies are the huge companies. I'm sure, Roger, you guys get impersonated. We get impersonated. So, if you're going through Scam Track, you'll see, Walmart imposter, Amazon imposter. You know, people will open an email and they'll see that logo, but they won't look at the email address and read it. And they're like, oh no, something happened. Unfortunately, the big companies get impersonated all the time. So it's just knowing where you shop, what you've signed up for, and looking at that email address, if it came really from the company or if it's got like a Gmail or a different, like a free domain, just doing those checks and balances can really help.
Yeah, and also do check sometimes with advertisements. The advertisements will pretend to look like the legitimate site. I think I did that once for an airline where I clicked on the promoted link and it took me to a website that had the logo of the airline and had a phone number right on top. I'm like, this I'm not familiar with. This is not the homepage of that airline. So I had to go and back out and then go find either the correct URL of that airline or go and type that correct link in the address bar.
Somebody's asking about passkeys. So I'm a huge fan of passkeys. Lucas, can you paste the article we have on our website about passkeys? One thing I will caution though is my mom got her passkey hijacked lately to a popular retailing site. I think she clicked on malvertising and ended up with a remote access Trojan. And so there's no silver bullet here, right? But understanding, I don't want to get too deep into explaining how a passkey works. You can thanks for pasting that in the chat, Lucas, our article about passwords going away and using passkeys. So I'm generally a big fan of those. They're not 100% foolproof, especially if you have an 84-year-old mother like mine who likes to click on a lot of different things, including things that are malicious. So you still have to use some general precautions. But Melanie or Roger, do you want to discuss passkeys at all?
No, I think you made a great point, though, that none of this stuff is 100%. I think the more we can do our due diligence, understand, retailers we're shopping at, how the protections work for our devices, I think the more education we have, the better off we are. I think relying on technology and not like educating ourselves is where people get into trouble, or that you're not working like with an older parent or a younger child to say, just don't leave your phone on a bar with your when Venmo open.
Yep.
Just having the conversations and educating ourselves, I think, is the best way to do these things, and using all of these tools to enhance that can help keep us safe, but nobody's 100% safe.
I'm going to give a pitch for then and now. If you're going home for the holidays and you're looking for something to help your aging loved ones, Lucas will put a link in there to then and now on our website. So it's there's a printed workbook and then also a digital version of the workbook on a microsite. That's to help you explain some of these concepts to your parents or grandparents or aging loved ones, and it's hands-on help. There's some how-to videos that make it a little bit easier for them to understand how to do some of these things. Somebody's asking about protecting our data when we use a printer. I was looking online and printers are AI enabled now. Yikes. Roger or Melanie, are you up to date on that one? AI enabled printers that might be capturing your data?
I will have to do some research on that.
Same.
That's a new one to me.
Write that down.
I would not be surprised. Another question here. Do some email platforms catch scams like Google? Which platforms are best at this? So I think you're talking about phishing emails there or scammy emails. I think I'm a Gmail user. My husband's a Proton Mail user, and I think both of those do a good job. Do either of you have any advice on which email platform which ones might be best at catching fish?
That is a great question. what
I mean, I
is
rarely get
involved?
malicious emails in my Gmail. And if you go and look at the spam folder, you're going to see all the stuff that they sent to spam. And it is maddening sometimes to see the volume of things that they're blocking that aren't getting through to your inbox. Most of the reputable email providers now are going to do a pretty good job of this, but you still have to, like Melanie said, nothing's 100%. You still have to do
Yeah.
some checking on
I
your
mean,
own.
I still get like, and I have two email, I have a Gmail and a Yahoo, and I still get like random spam in my Yahoo account. And just it goes kind of goes back to something you said, Lisa. We've all been exposed to a data breach. Our email addresses have been exposed. So you may end up on some weird email list. So just unsubscribing, making sure you're really clicking that unsubscribe button. My email has it for me at the top. They're like, this is from a list, unsubscribe, and I just click that button. But I'm always very careful. If it looks really sketchy, I'm not going to click unsubscribe. I'll just delete it and block the address because it might lead to, as Roger was saying before, it could lead to somewhere else.
Yeah.
Or they're seeing if you're a live inbox by
Yeah.
opening those emails. So a lot of times I just delete them flat out. I don't even open
Yep.
them to see what they are.
Do you guys have any advice on safely shopping for IoT products, Internet of Things devices for the holidays? I think my first rule is if it doesn't really need to be connected to the internet, don't connect it. One of the
That is
stories
the
I
best
heard,
rule I've heard all day.
one of the stories I've heard about, it was either Volt Typhoon or Salt Typhoon. And those are attacks by Russia and China to get to our electrical grid and our water system, things like that you might have heard of, and they're still there in a lot of cases. And they have used people's home routers to do that. So they've used average citizens' technology infrastructure to launch those attacks. One of the stories that I heard was that one of those average American citizens who was targeted by either China or Russia, I don't remember which. It was a vulnerable internet connected dog collar that I think it was Russia was able to get to that person's home router through that dog collar. So that's one of those questions where I say, do you really need to hook it up to the internet? Does it need to be does it need to have access to your home router? Any advice on buying IoT devices? I mean, I think if the manufacturer doesn't have any content at all in their product information about security, that's kind of a red flag to me. You want to know that it's a priority for the manufacturer, right? Any other advice there?
I would say the best advice is seeing if they make updates to those devices frequently. And sometimes when you plug in an IoT device and the first time you start it, it will be saying, hey, we're checking for updates before you're able to set this device up. And I think that's very important and a good sign that they're doing due diligence in securing whatever that item is, whether that's a light bulb, a security camera, it could be anything like a smart blender or a smart fridge. But like what you said, Lisa,
Wait, there's
it,
smart blenders now, Roger.
I want to say so.
Oh
But if they
boy.
haven't invented one, then I think I may have provided a good idea for someone to build something for that.
Uh-oh. Yeah, I would say they also should be. I know that Google, when Nest devices first came out, they didn't do this, and then they had a highly publicized hack, and then they changed their practice. That they don't let you just keep the default password. And if you set up a password, that they tell you if it's already on the dark web and it's not a secure password or it's not long enough or whatever. Practices like that. If a manufacturer is only letting you set up, say, a 6-character password, that's not long enough. That's too easy to crack. Somebody mentioned having a guest network in your home, having a segmented network in your home for those kinds of devices. That's a really good idea as well.
The chat is like popping off right now. Make a margarita blender. I love it. I don't know, Roger. I think you just invented the smartphone
Internet
app for the
connected
blender.
blender.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if you don't see me, that might be where I'm going.
So here's one that's this comes up all the time. What about using a VPN? So I would like to caution people that a VPN is not the same as antivirus. There's some advertising out there for VPNs right now that makes it sound like it's also acting like an antivirus. It is not. It does not take the place of one. We don't really recommend if you're going to spend if you're choosing what to spend your security dollars on, I'm going to tell you that there are other things that are more important. Having good antivirus and keeping it up to date, having devices that are still supported, right, where your operating systems are getting updated regularly. You might need to replace a device if it's getting too old, and I'd rather have you spend money on that than on a VPN. A password manager, a family password manager account, I'd rather have you spend money on that than a VPN. VPNs are not as necessary as they used to be because most traffic is now encrypted. Roger or Melanie, anything you want to add about VPNs? If you're traveling overseas, they can be useful. There'll be some websites, like, for example, I was trying to refill a prescription while I was on vacation in a foreign country. My drugstore blocked traffic from that country, so I had to use a VPN so that the traffic looked like it was coming from, I looked like I was in the United States and they would let me access my account. So they can be handy for things like that. Recommendations for antivirus providers. I personally use Bitdefender, but there's lots of good ones out there. Melanie, do you guys cover antivirus protection on your website at all?
We have like our business profiles on the companies. We don't make product recommendations at the Better Business Bureau, but we always encourage people to read the customer reviews, read the complaints, and read how the company responded to the complaints. And if the business is BBB accredited or not. So if something goes wrong, if they're accredited, they're more likely to answer your complaints.
Somebody's asking about signing up for credit alerts. I think that's a great idea. I have those set up on my accounts, so that if somebody makes a large charge to one of your credit cards, I have you guys heard of cases where those text alerts or email alerts are actually phish? I can imagine that happens as well.
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
I'm sure you guys, Roger, are very well aware of that, but it is interesting. I forgot I signed up for those alerts and thought there was fraud on my card and called my bank. And the guy said to me, he goes, "You signed up for this." And this is going back 6 years ago when it was new. But just knowing like which ones you have signed up for. I mean, like I have a card with Chase. Chase is a national brand. Just making sure that you know that you signed up for those fraud alerts. And then, if you're still not sure, going to your physical card and calling the number on the back of that card is always the best way to go. And I think, Roger, you're nodding, so I think you're agreeing with me.
And I do want to add another thing is you get text messages from unknown numbers, like the 5-digit. What I've done is I label that in my
Yes.
contacts. So that way, if I'm getting something that is texted from Discover, it shows up as an alert from Discover. So
Yes, I
that's a
do
really
that as well.
good way of identifying those codes because sometimes you get a random code, and that also applies for the MFA codes. If you log into something so frequently and it's asking for that code, just label it. It only takes a couple of seconds to add that as a contact, and
Yep.
that way you know
Perfect.
for certain that that's coming from that phone number, that
You
code
guys
or link.
my mom's phone when I'm home for the holidays. We are out of time. I'm sorry we didn't get to every single question. I love it that there's security folks on here who have chimed in with some pretty good advice,
Oh my
like
God, the
freezing your
chat was
credit.
amazing.
Yep. Microsoft Defender, Bitdefender, people making recommendations about antivirus, freezing your credit. That's good
Yep.
stuff. Thank you so much for everybody who participated in the chat. The webinar was recorded and will be available afterwards on YouTube, and usually in an email we'll send out a link to that a few days after the webinar. So you can look for that. If you're not in our database, go to StaySafeOnline.org to sign up for those email updates. I want to thank Melanie and Roger very much today for all their great advice. I think you both have some really great resources available. And thanks again, everybody, for your time. Have a good rest of your day.